Today we resume the Sutta exploration series. And in doing so, I wanted to have us go back to the event that made it possible for us to have the Dhamma in the first place. Oftentimes we think that all was needed was just for Lord Buddha to become the Buddha. And then he would start teaching. Unfortunately, that isn't it. That isn't enough. And there are certain requirements that need to be in place. For a Buddha to become a Buddha, it starts eons earlier. The person must have the intention, the noble intention, to want to become a Buddha, to even ponder such a possibility, because that also reflects many factors, many causes that have to be there, such as the person in question needs to be in the presence of a Buddha. How rare is that? To be in the presence of a living Buddha, You can't be reading about it and then be moved and inspired and say, oh, you know what, that's what I'll become. When we were children, the teacher would come and ask us in kindergarten or primary school, what would you like to become, Johnny? And I would have classmates saying, I want to become king. I want to become a chef. I want to become this. I want to become that. All this is taking place because people have a notion. People talk about profession of a pilot, of a chef, of a king, etc. So within the cultural narrative, there needs to be the presence of a living Buddha, yes, but the conversation about it, pertaining to it, the possibility of it, even. That's what it indicates, as we were talking some time ago about Anathapindika. All he had to hear was the word Buddha from his brother-in-law. And he kept on asking, what did you say? Did you say the Buddha? He says, yes. It wakes so many things up. So seeds, intentions from the past. So we have a tendency of looking just at what is happening to us right now in this time period, in this time and space. And that's it. We look at it in a very tunnel vision attitude, and we don't have the perspective to look at the depth of time and those people who have gone before us. So the Buddha had to rely on several things, but the initial important factor for him to have had was to have the desire in the presence of the Buddha at the time, and to make that wish, to make that strong desire full of intention in the presence of a Buddha. And there needs to be the question asked to the Buddha. The Buddha has to see if this person in front of him does in fact have the necessary qualities to attain, because it requires tremendous amount of resilience, fortitude, strength, patience, willpower, and the ability to have all of the paramis, all of the perfections, to be able for him to obtain those and not give in. So let's say all of those requirements were met. And then the Buddha to be becomes a Buddha in a future age, when the time comes, when he leaves the opulent, luxurious life and goes and subjects himself to so many different types of difficult self-mortification practices of his day, and then finally pull away from that and find the middle path, the Noble Eightfold Path, and be able to see Paticcasamuppada becoming the Buddha. Nevertheless, that does not mean that he would necessarily be compelled to teach after that. There needs to be the necessary seeds in him to want to teach in the first place. To be inspired by the presence of a Buddha, living Buddha, when the person is making the intention to become a Buddha one day. That's what makes the person a bodhisattva. But they also must have in their hearts the desire to be moved enough by the teaching of the Buddha who inspired them in the first place, to want to help as many people as the Buddha was. Not to just be in the presence of that glory or to become that source himself one day. No, so many people have been touched by Lord Buddha. It's countless human beings. But the number of devas and brahmas who were influenced by him, when compared to the human beings who were influenced to the point where they too became noble disciples or even arahants, the numbers are, well, it's innumerable, countless. The suttas say, the commentaries say, but especially the suttas tell us that clearly. But how do you do that? Because the Buddha, when they become a Buddha, if they don't go ahead and teach, they will not lose the status of a Buddhahood. It's an added, compassionate, empathetic step. That's why they also embody the Mahakaruna, the great compassion Buddhas do. Now, if the Buddha is not teaching, they won't be doing anything wrong. But they will end up being what they're called sometimes solitary Buddhas or Pacceka Buddhas. Yes, they have a tremendous force field around them. They have a strong presence of energy around them. Yes, other beings will recognize them, but they will come and be around them. But it's almost like going to, this might seem rather mundane of a comparison, but imagine you're going to see a most valuable jewel in a museum. And you go there and it causes you to be quiet. And you're moved, you're touched by it to some extent, and then you walk away. You're not transformed necessarily because they're not teaching you any Dhamma. That's why they go unnoticed. Pacceka Buddha, they're called silent Buddhas. They do not teach. Why? Because they never had the desire to teach, to proclaim. So we have to be quite fortunate to be living, even though we missed the opportunity to show up in his presence, some of us. And we showed up a few thousand years later. Nevertheless, we are at a time where there's still, we're talking about Lord Buddha, an actual Buddha who taught 45 years. So this sutta for today is about that encounter that takes place between a Brahma God, Brahma Sahampati, and Lord Buddha. The situation is this: Lord Buddha becomes the Buddha and sees, having experienced and understood and realized the Four Noble Truths, looked at and discerned and scrutinized the 12 links of causal relations, paticca samuppada, in forward motion, backward motion, and both. And then he sees that it's so complex. The Dhamma is not for everyone. This beautiful, beautiful Dhamma that is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in its middle, and beautiful in its end is not for everyone. One can imagine how discouraging someone of that caliber might feel. So just as intense it had been for the individual to have the seeds for Buddhahood one day, that compels them because it's such a powerful arrowhead or an arrow that they shot years ago, eons ago. It's so powerful, it has such a powerful pull to it that it allows the person, despite all of the challenges, all of the ordeals they have to undergo, to still keep their course and not give up, not give up, not give up, until they reach that moment where they say to their father, in this case, Dad, King Suddhodana, Maharaja, I'm out. I'm leaving. Yeah, but what about your wife? You just had a son. Yes, but if I don't do it now, I'm done for. This life is gone. It took a lot for me to get here. The pull of the desire, the wish, the intention to become a Buddha is so powerful. But what I'm trying to say here is that the intention to teach must be as compelling. Otherwise, you won't have Dhamma to be taught, because the Pacceka Buddha then would become the embodiment of the Dhamma, but they would not teach. Great, but what does that mean for the rest of us? And beings or existence or the world will spiral further and further down into dark ages until actual Buddha shows up with the intention to teach. So this adds another criterion on the very conditionality and the need for all the factors to be there for us to have a Buddha, to have a Dhamma. Because when you do have a Buddha, then you have the Dhamma. And when you do have Dhamma, that means the Buddha has taught it. They go hand in hand. They're one and the same, in fact. So, Buddha is looking at the world after attaining Buddhahood, and they have to gauge. It's like a teacher going into a classroom or a school, and they've heard all these rumors or they have their opinions about it, but they go there and they see the quality of the students and the administration and the way the school is run, the desire of being taught or the absence of it, the rowdiness, the disorderliness, the undisciplined behavior of students, the disinterest in learning, all that can discourage even the most avid, dedicated of teachers. Now, bear that in mind as we begin this sutta. So, let's begin. So this is coming from the connected discourses, the Samyutta Nikaya, from the sixth Samyutta and the bigger collection of Samyuttas. and so which is the first one, Sagata Vagga Samyutta. It has many subsections, and it's wonderful. And to have this, so anyhow, let's dive in. So Samyutta Nikaya Sutta number 6.1. From the Sagata Vagga Samyutta, discourse is connected to verses. And this comes from the sub-collection of Samyuttas called the Brahma Samyutta, the collections dedicated to the Brahma gods. There's different levels of Brahmas. Some of them you do see them in Indian culture, for example, Hindu culture, but they always are given the epithet or the characteristic of being immortal, something like that, and that's never the case. Lord Buddha revealed that they don't last forever. It might seem like it, but it's not. So Brahma Samyutta would be the connected discourses pertaining to the Brahma gods, and this is from the Patama Vagga, the first section. The sutta's name is Brahmāyācana Sutta, the Brahma gods request. Sometimes in English it's translated as the invitation, but it's more than an invitation, it's a request. It's almost like a begging request. Let's begin. This is what I personally heard. Once, after his awakening, the Blessed One was living in Uruvela by the river Neranjara at the foot of the goat herder's banyan tree. Then, while the Blessed One was in seclusion, the following thought occurred to him. This Dhamma I finally discovered is extremely deep, truly difficult to comprehend, let alone to penetrate and come to see or appreciate its depth and scope. For it is indeed excellent. It is sublimely peaceful, beyond anything the mind could conjure up, utterly transcending the confines of logic. It is so subtle that it can only be realized by the select wise. We need to have certain requirements. Wisdom is one of them. The ability to have a discerning mind, inquisitive mind, curious mind. But all those to allow us to get to the bottom of things, not just to feed our curiosity, but to transform our lives, to make our presence here in life count. And yes, dukkha helps us to get to that sharp edge of the arrowhead, to make a choice, to make a decision, to want to get to the bottom of things, not to buy what people are giving us, selling us. Because it's priceless. It's excellent. Okay. So this is his realization, is okay, let me look at this prospect. It's so complicated, but it's also very elegant. But you need to have a certain type of mind to be able to even show interest in listening to it. People love to hear about gods and demons and wealth, and especially once this life ends. Some people have given up totally. That's why for them, this life at the end, it's just the end. It's just pitch blackness at the end of life. There's nothing beyond it. It's easy. They just say, well, I'm an atheist. I don't believe. I'm very much, that's it. Lights out, we're out. Anybody who believes beyond that, there's something beyond that point, they're just naive. I'm just very rooted in this world, in this material world, and I'm happy with that. And I'll practice morality, ethics. But that's it. And I will make the most of my life, enjoying this and that, seek pleasure. Most celebrities do that. Most people who are, individuals in the public eye, unfortunately, speak about that. But the majority of people, deep down, culturally perhaps, we have this longing to know that there is something beyond this life. And in fact, if I do these good actions, I will get something in return. So majority of the people will be leaning towards that I will get a return. I will get my rewards after this life. That has nothing to do with the Dhamma. Every religion, to some degree, is offering some version of that. The depth of Dhamma goes beyond that. Of course, there is karma, there's consequences to actions, there's the many different benefits that one gets, both in this life as well as in other lifetimes to come, because of the good and bad actions and their consequences, which will greet them. That is undeniable. But the Dhamma is far deeper than that. Much deeper than that. But the majority are interested in that version of religion, of spirituality. And Lord Buddha is looking at seeing what he's dealing with. This is too deep to get the full scope of it. A person has to be of a different caliber of understanding, of wisdom, of discernment. But this generation of beings is quite fond of becoming attached to things, he continues, loving this and grabbing onto that, quickly nailing themselves to this or that which they come to enjoy. Senses, sense pleasures. They're there. You can call them undeniable facts. But we don't go beyond. When the moment comes and you are tasting that sensual pleasure, what happens? Does it stay? No, it doesn't stay. That's why you need another one. But we refuse to see that. Well, that takes a special kind of a person to say, hold on, what was that? I was promised one thing, but I was never delivered. Why am I even continuing doing this? If you can't keep on adding money into an investment that keeps making you lose money, right? There's a hole underneath. It's a money pit. So you don't do that. But why is it that when it comes to sense pleasures, we don't mind? Well, that takes a wiser person to identify this and do something about it. Cut loose from that sickness of thinking. Therefore, considering how those beings live and practice with such a fixated and possessive attitude, it will be especially difficult for them to see the subtlety and utter beauty of this Dhamma, to penetrate through this sublime pattern of conditionality, this dependent arising of phenomena manifesting while being conditioned by other causal factors. The Dhamma, he who sees the Dhamma sees the dependent origination or causation. Paticca Samuppada. He who sees Paticca Samuppada will also see Dhamma. They're not separate. As a result, it would be truly difficult for them to comprehend the stilling of all habitually driven internal preparations, sankharas, the relinquishment of all assets, upadhi, the very ending of craving and the thirst for more, the fading away of passions, the experiencing of cessation, of Nibbana supreme. This verse, you get to see it in different contexts throughout the suttas. And if you could just recall that, it puts you back online with your path when things become difficult or you're overwhelmed with anything. Assets, upadhi, I mentioned, the relinquishment of them has to do with the things that we identify with and call them our own. This is mine. These are my feelings. These are my attainments. These are my achievements. These are my titles. These are my memories. These are my relationships. These are my assets, basically, which we think that they last forever, or at least so long as we're alive. Even when we're dying, we are carrying those assets. Sometimes you see military individuals or people who have been given accolades while alive, medals and things. And if they're a big shot, basically, before the casket is moved or carried on a carriage or something, I used to see this on news and things. And I asked my dad one time, like, what is that on the pillow? Like somebody's carrying a pillow, and on the pillow, or there's this frame of things, and it has medals. And he's like, what is that? He's like, oh, those are the medals and things that they were awarded while alive. So the person is showing off their assets and not showing off the real asset, which is the dead body coming behind, a few meters behind them. But we do this all the time. We fall back on these assets that we can see and relate to much more than we do with the sankharas, which are hidden, the drives that we have, the habitual drives. So he's saying these people are stuck, these beings. So if I were to explain to beings this wonderful Dhamma, they would simply be unable to understand it. In fact, they might very well misunderstand or misconstrue what I would be instructing them. And this itself will be quite discouraging and unnecessarily troublesome for me. Imagine you're teaching something, you're explaining something. You don't have to be a teacher. You could be just talking about something and a person comes, or you're talking to colleagues or friends or some people, and you're explaining to them what you saw. But there's always some, there's this yeah, but attitude. Or explaining it away, I don't buy what you're saying. Or, but yeah, but it could have been something else that you saw, type of a response. Enough so that it will kill any desire for you to explain it any further. You're going to ask yourself, what am I doing here with these people, these ingrates? I'm in the wrong crowd. I should just keep my mouth shut and just nod and say, yeah, you're right. You know what? You're right. Absolutely right. And I won't speak. That's also perhaps the attitude of a Pacceka Buddha. He's like, okay, I've given up. So Lord Buddha is at that point, and this is called the great hesitation. Hesitation. And then the Blessed One uttered the following unrehearsed verses, inspired words which he spoke spontaneously and not as the result of some divine revelation. The sutta made it clear that it said that. So in other religions, you have this, God speaking, or some angel showing up, or there, something happens in the cosmos, and they're moved, and they're something is revealed to them. None of those things. And Lord Buddha did not even rehearse these verses that we're about to be witnessing here. For so long I toiled and struggled with much difficulty to reach this pinnacle of genuine understanding that is so subtle. But now, on having realized it, might as well just give up on teaching or trying to explain it to others. For it is simply useless to share what I have discovered with beings who are so lost in their passions and rage. They are simply unable to easily grasp or understand this Dhamma that truly awakens. After all, this Dhamma goes the other way, flowing in the opposite direction to what beings are used to seeing in the world. It is deep but clear, yet intricately elegant, and so very subtle to behold. It is no wonder that those who are lost in their passions, holding them near and dear to their hearts, can never come to witness nor taste the Dhamma that frees, so long as they keep themselves deeply buried beneath the massive mountain of ignorance. It's a sad realization when you see that this is what's happening around you. And Lord Buddha was like so eager because this is unimaginable. The Dhamma, finally he realized it. And then you look and it's like, there's no receptacle for it. Nobody to be able to receive it, be interested in it, want to hear it, let alone practice it. And by uttering these words, the Blessed One's heart began to look away from the prospect of teaching the Dhamma to others, while considering that it would just be better not to teach it at all and to remain quiet instead. This is terrible. It's like if this would happen, it would be cause for mourning throughout existence, the universes. It's terrible because a great opportunity would be dead, would be collapsed. The opportunity being, yes, existence now finally has a Buddha. It's so rare. It's so rare. So rare that there cannot be more than one Buddha at a time in the whole existence. All the multiverses, all the cosmos, it cannot have more than one Buddha at a time. The intensity of the energy is so great that it would tear up existence into pieces. So it's rare, okay. But the Buddha becomes really a Buddha because of the teaching. And now he's he's looking away. His heart is looking away from teaching. It's almost heartbreaking. Even if we might be allowed to say it must be also heartbreaking for Lord Buddha as a teacher to realize, it's like that teacher who went to the school and saw what he's going to be dealing with, and sees that this is not a good place for, it's not ready. So that teacher will turn around and walk away from the gates of the school without having taught a single word. However, this is where it changes. Right at that moment, on becoming aware in his heart of the Blessed One's thoughts, the Brahma God Sahampati was quickly jolted with the realization. Oh, how terrible it would be. What a disastrous loss for the entire existence. For existence itself will surely be lost, doomed in its future prospect, for certain, if indeed the Tathagata, the perfectly self-awakened Buddha's heart is firm in looking away from the prospect of teaching the Dhamma to others, by deciding not to teach it to beings at all, and to remain quiet instead. Then, just as quickly as a strong man would stretch out his arm or flex it back and pull it back towards his body, Brahma Sahampati instantaneously vanished from the Brahma world and reappeared in our world, right in front of the Blessed One. And with utmost respect, Brahma Sahampati arranged his upper robe over one shoulder, and by kneeling with his right knee onto the ground, with both hands raised in Anjali towards the Blessed One, he spoke these words. This is how they first do this, and then the hands. It means that you're fully present. You mean, this is not a ritualistic thing. You mean every single gesture. Thoughts and feelings are being expressed without words at this point. You're beginning, you're approaching. There's a protocol. But it's not just formalities. Brahma Sahampati was moved to his core at the terrible prospect of such a happening, such an occurrence where there's no Dhamma. Meanwhile, all of the Brahma gods, the Devas, were so happy, jubilant, as we saw in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta some years ago. Lord Buddha, when he set the wheel of Dhamma in motion by teaching it, all of the classes of Devas, all the Brahmas were celebrating. That celebration was still going on. The awakening, especially when Lord Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, that's when we had Anya Kondanya, the first one to actually see the Dhamma and becoming a Sotapanna. That hadn't happened yet, but the awakening had happened, and that had created such a reverberation because there's an earthquake in all of the realms, not just on this realm, when the Buddha attains Buddhahood. Now imagine that has happened, and everybody's so, especially Brahma Sahampati, who is not a noble disciple anymore, but the way I understand it, he was already set solidly on the path, on the Dhamma, basically. He was awakened. But this was terrible news, and that's why he immediately showed up in the presence of Lord Buddha. And with his hands in Anjali said, "Teach the Dhamma, Bhante. Please, let the Blessed One instruct and share the Dhamma. Please, Lord, let the Holy One teach the sublime Dhamma. For there are beings in existence who have only a little bit of dust in their eyes. Little dust in their eyes. They are losing their valuable time and opportunity in being reborn in conducive states. Yet, without hearing and listening to the Dhamma, they will surely perish." This is the opportunity where they were born, especially as individuals, as beings who are able to practice, such as human beings, as far as we're concerned. To be born as a human being at the time of Lord Buddha, it took so long for Lord Buddha to become Lord Buddha, yes, but it also took a long time for other individuals. This is something we don't think about, who had the desire to be at the presence of a Buddha and to hear the Dhamma, so they too break free. In past lives, they had made that intention as well. In their turn, they had that desire, and now they're finally born as human beings. They're still unaware that they were looking for the Dhamma to complete the cycle, to complete their spiritual journey, to attain arahantship. And if Lord Buddha did not teach, that would be the end for such individuals' prospects of attaining in that life, at least. They're going to have to wait for so many other, more billions of lives in order for another future Buddha to show up. And look at this, the 2,600 years have passed since this historical Buddha of ours, and there's no Buddha, and it's not going to happen anytime soon. We still have millions and maybe billions of years still for the next future Buddha, despite what people claim. It's not happening anytime soon. So all this time they would have been lost in samsara. So they're losing their valuable time, Brahma Sahampati is saying, because they have the right conducive environment to practice. Well, if there's no Dhamma, how are they going to practice? Just sila? Just giving dana? Just doing kusala actions? Okay. But there's no wisdom. There's proper conduct, yes, but there's no penetration into insights. There is no understanding of the reality of anicca, dukkha, anatta. Only a Buddha can teach that. They are the ones who need to hear the Blessed One's words. They are in desperate need to hear the Holy One's teaching, because once they do, they will surely understand the Dhamma and comprehend its depth of meaning. We live in a world where there are many religions, where there are places where there's no religion practice. There's no wholesome behavior. There's killing, pillaging in the name of religion in some cases, but there's also just, eye for an eye going on in the world, even today. A law of the jungle, as they say. Go get it. If you don't, other people will get it. So don't be dumb. Use your opportunities wisely and get what other people are also after. That's not Dhamma. But that's not happening in a foreign or different time period. That's happening even now in our own lifetime. Even in our own lifetime. This is dangerous. But let's see what Lord Buddha says. Thus spoke the Brahma Sahampati as he continued by uttering these words in verse. Actually, he'll continue, Brahma Sahampati, because he still needs to make his case to convince Lord Buddha. Blessed Lord, there arose among the Magadhans an impure Dhamma. Magadha is that region of India in Madhya Pradesh, in the middle country, they're called, where Lord Buddha was from. Magadhan kings, etc. King of Kosala. So Purana Kassapa was one of those teachers at the time. Nigantanataputta, the Jains, the Mahavir character. So there's a lot of different teachers who are proclaiming some type of what you could say today, atheistic or non-consequential teachings of actions, non-consequential in that regard. So there's no mother, there's no father. Ultimately, you would say, whatever you can get away with, you get away with. Good on you. There are no consequences to good or bad actions, all these things. So he was denying karma, all these things, which causes people to go astray. So, blessed Lord, recently there arose among the Magadhans an impure Dhamma, a teaching that is tainted and dirty, for it sullies the hearts of beings. When you don't have conscience, when you don't have consideration, when you have nothing but greed, outsmarting others to get away with things. What is that? That's a dirty heart. It's run by greed, hatred, and delusion. And you look around and you see this now. Now, let these people hear and listen to the genuine Dhamma that is utterly pure, which the impeccable one has discovered, and fling open the gate to the deathless, O blessed Lord. Just as someone who reaches the highest point on a mountaintop is able to see everyone in all directions beneath him, in just the same manner, O peerless and all-seeing wise one, you have indeed become the Dhamma itself. You have reached the very highest point achievable by any being. And now you look down upon all these beings everywhere, as you witness them drowning in their despair, pain, and misery, being unaware and unable to shake themselves off from sorrow and endless torment, overcome by the ceaseless cycles of rebirth and getting old. Rise, therefore, O conqueror, rise, O matchless vanquisher, you who have made it on your own and owe nothing to absolutely no one. Lord Buddha didn't have a teacher, to become a Buddha. People forget that. He made it on his own. Some people were there to help him with getting into some jhanas, this and that, but It's powerful when you have to struggle on your own. And Lord Buddha struggled on his own in absolute darkness. He made it. So these accolades are on point. You are indeed the peerless leader of the caravan, the one to guide countless beings to true safety. Please, may the Blessed One go ahead and teach the Dhamma, for there are and will be many who would indeed comprehend and thus break free. Beautiful verses that Brahma Sahampati spoke. What we need to consider here is, like I was mentioning, there needs to be a few factors in place for a Buddha to become a Buddha, for a person to become a Buddha. That's why, by the way, when you hear about this Bodhisattva vow thing that the Mahayanists came up with to make things easier, basically, to cop out from actually putting the effort, real effort to attain, by putting a wall between the Savakas or the disciples, those Sariputta characters, this and that. That's how Mahayanists were claiming the Arahants to be. No. Bodhisattvas are the real deal, like Lord Buddha was. Well, there's a problem with that. The whole Bodhisattva vow thing. Remember I mentioned how in order for you to make a Bodhisattva vow, which later on Siddhartha Gautama, our Buddha, had made earlier on, you have to be making it in front of a living Buddha. You have to have the necessary merits, punyas, and actions, and purity of heart already demonstrated in many, many lifetimes to get to that point. And then there has to be a confirmation made by the living Buddha to whom you have to bow in front of and make that request. So it's not something that you read in a book and all of a sudden you're moved enough to say, yes, I want to become a Buddha. Or you go to a temple and you make some ceremonies, some donations, and you're good to go. You have taken the Bodhisattva vow. This is total nonsense. But it's, even though it's completely, absolutely baseless, has nothing to do with the Dhamma, nothing. It's just based on, when I say baseless, it is based on ignorance, but it's not based on wisdom or the tradition. Nevertheless, countless beings, countless people to this day, and for many, many years to come, so long as these traditions continue, they will be leading people astray from the Dhamma that was taught by Lord Buddha. So they are contrary to what Lord Buddha did attain, and especially what he did as a teacher for 45 years. This is a stab in the back, in fact, of the tradition. Because the person, in order for them to take the Bodhisattva vow, what they also are doing is they are delaying their progress, their attainment. No, we're after Buddhahood. What? Yeah, I'm going to show everybody the path of Dhamma. I want to help everyone else to become an Arahant, not an Arahant, I'm sorry, a Buddha, and then I'll attain my awakening. I will delay my desire from becoming fulfilled. There's so many even logical, commonsensical things that are missing in this. It's so naive, it's so childish. It's like people standing at the doorway of their burning house, in the inside of the house, and saying, no, you go first. No, you get out first. No, you go out first. No, you go out first. That's the Mahayana, which you can call it Marayana, Mara's path, because it goes against the teaching of Lord Buddha. Lord Buddha did not tolerate individuals to just skulk around. He pushed and pushed people to go ahead, attain. In fact, if you attain a level where you're just going to be reborn in a heavenly realm because you did some good deeds or you attained some high jhanas, and now you're even in the Brahma realm, Rupa Lokas, you still failed because you were after some type of pleasure, some celestial pleasure. You still fail because you are still stuck, hooked in the grasp of Mara, because Mara controls all these 31 layers of existence, minus the pure abodes. You're in samsara because you're going to fall out of these realms, however sublime they might be. Cut the shackles, set yourself free. And these people are intentionally bulldozing their way into ignorance and wasting this tremendous opportunity they have to take the Dhamma and make it through and cut themselves free from samsara. If Brahma Sahampati knew about this, he would not have probably approached, but he approached because of other people who had little dust in their eyes. And that is why he's beseeching Lord Buddha to teach. So there are two requirements, basically. I was referring to one of them, Bahira, or I think that's called, what it's called, Bahira Nidana. This is not Bahia. Bahira is a cause, an external cause from the outside that has to be there, triggering or inviting or requesting or allowing the Buddha to teach the Dhamma. That has to be there. One. So there needs to be an external invitation. In this case, we have it in the person of Brahma Sahampati, who's there, who's making a formal request on behalf of existence. So that is the number one factor. The second factor is, in Pali, it's called Ajhatika Nidana, which is the cause that comes from the person, from internally generated. This is what I was referring to earlier, that the desire to teach, the seeds of wanting to teach the Dhamma once you do become a Buddha has to be there. It has to be very strong. Now, in the case of a Pacceka Buddha, the silent Buddha, the secluded Buddha who doesn't teach, that is either not there, they never cared for it, or is very, very weak to mention. But the desire to become a Buddha is there, obviously. That's why they became a Buddha, but silent, quiet, non-teaching Buddha. So here we just saw the worldly factor, the requirement or prerequisite being displayed in the form of Brahma Sahampati coming to Lord Buddha, making a formal request, and also making a good argument for us. He's fighting for us. He's fighting for us. Brahma Sahampati. Let's see what happens next. It was at that moment that the Blessed One, while considering this heartfelt request from the Brahma God Sahampati, scanned the entire cosmos with his mind, as he looked deep into the very hearts of beings with the purity of his Buddha heart, compassionately gazing upon all beings throughout existence. And by carefully examining and scrutinizing as he scanned the hearts and minds of beings, thus, with his Buddha heart, the Blessed One saw that there were indeed beings who were ready, beings who had but a little bit of dust and dirt still left in their eyes, as well as many other beings with piles of thick dust and dirt in their eyes, who were not ready at all. Similarly, he saw that there were beings who with keenly sharp and inquiring faculties, as well as those with dull and weak faculties. He also saw that there were those with upright and good characters, eager and very much ready to be taught, as well as those crude and evil-hearted beings who possessed rough characters and were therefore too crude and not ready at all to be taught. So he's not doing the all or nothing thing. The world, you just forget about it. It's not worth it. He's not doing that. He's now looking and seeing there are some gems, some jewels, some diamonds in the rubbish pile. He says, oh, okay. Similarly, the Blessed One saw clearly and identified those who were not taking this current life of theirs and its supportive conditions for granted, and instead were eagerly doing their best to consider the consequences of their actions and how these would be affecting their future rebirths. And as a result, they engaged by living their lives in a responsible manner. So they're not treating this life of theirs as, take whatever you can, make most of this life and enjoy as many pleasures as you can. Sometimes that's one of the saddest things to see. You see an older person, a human being, sometimes very, coming from a, let's say, social upper classes or educated or very famous, powerful, resourceful, good education, etc. And they open their mouths and all you hear is just rubbish when it comes to, yes, you have to take life by the horns. You have to enjoy the sense pleasures as long as you can before your body breaks down. Meanwhile, they're in their 80s or 90s. What a sad, sad phenomenon that is. What a wasted life. But that's why Lord Buddha saw that that's not the case all the time, because there are those also who are wanting to put an end to suffering. And that's why they've shown up in this life. In contrast, however, he also saw those numerous other beings who lived carelessly, using and abusing their life and its favorable conditions, with no concern for how their current intentional actions would impact them in future rebirths, once they relinquish this body at death. The value of understanding karma and its impact on your life, not just this one, but other lifetimes to come, cannot be overstated. It's so important for us to weigh in our actions instead of just like, yeah, go after this. If you're getting away with it, good on you. Anybody who's alive must engage in some type of a good action for others, good deeds for others. Be generous with one's time, one's energy, one's body, given physical activities that need to be done for someone else, resources, knowledge. That's a good place to start. But we're having less and less of that. You're in it for yourself. So you might as well go ahead and start, reaping the benefits of being alive and having these resources for yourself. Well, what if something happens and you get into a car accident and you break both of your legs? Or you become quadriplegic and you can't move any of your limbs? Where does that place you on the social ladder? Now you need to look at others for their compassion, hoping that they're going to behave much better than you did prior to losing those body parts. So sometimes the person gets lucky and gets to be hit with that fact of their karmic actions while they're still alive. So they can do a before and after contrast. Lucky in that sense. Otherwise, other people are just going around and living their lives, reaping the benefits, so-called benefits, and making the most of this life for themselves selfishly, But because they are nearing the end and they die, they think we got this. Okay, so it's like life, I did it in spite of you, and you couldn't catch me. I got away with all these things. No, that's terrible, because now the person is going to grow up, or actually be born with so many difficulties if they are born as a human. But they won't be there to recall any of this. That's why it's bad. But the person has to be probing and really going beyond the superficial to even consider such fact. Or those, just like in the case of a lotus pond with blue water lilies, or those with pink or white water lilies and fragrant lotuses. So Lord Buddha is going to do a contrast between these different beings that he's seeing. Where some of the lotuses and lilies sprout from the mud, but do not rise at all, and instead stay near the bottom, living in or close to the thick mud, while nourishing themselves underwater. Well, animals are going to come and eat those budding lotuses. Turtles love sticking around at the bottom. Why? Where are they getting their food from? It's mud. And most of it is they can't, oh, they will eat those budding lotuses that barely made it out of the mud. But that's not why they were born. You have to have the drive to push yourself up and up and up and away from that environment. Then he saw those other lotuses and water lilies that once having sprouted in those pools, they grow higher but stop short from reaching the surface of the water, whereas some others push their way through and go high enough to emerge from the water's surface, yet stay there and do not rise any further, still smudged and surrounded by the water. While there are also those lotuses and fragrant water lilies that once having sprouted, they shoot upward, growing nonstop as they pierce through the water surface and do not relent until they have broken free. And thus they emerge out of the pool while standing freely, high above it, with their dry petals left untainted and untouched by the water underneath. And that's the image of an arahant. That's the image of, in fact, I would say all of the noble disciples, anyone who has seen the Nibbana, has experienced Nibbana, but usually it's a reference for the arahant. Water is not touched by its petals. And if it does, it just flows down, like we saw in the Brahmāyācana Sutta. Doesn't stick. In just the same manner, the Blessed One saw clearly and identified those who were not taking this current life of theirs and its supportive conditions for granted, and instead were eagerly doing their best to consider the consequences of their actions and how these would be affecting their future rebirths. As a result, they engaged in living their lives in a responsible manner. In contrast, however, he also saw numerous other beings who lived carelessly, using and abusing their life and its favorable conditions, with no concern for how their current intentional actions would impact them in future rebirths, once they relinquish this body at death. Having now scrutinized and clearly seen the vast potential that lay in waiting, the Blessed One replied to the request made by the Brahma God Sahampati, who was still there, bowing at the Blessed One's feet as he spoke these words in verse. This is Lord Buddha. And so it is, for at last, flung open is now the very gate to the deathless. It was due to the prospect of being unnecessarily troublesome to me, due to this wonderful Dhamma being misunderstood by this generation of beings, that I initially considered not teaching, O Brahma, this subtle and beautiful Dhamma that truly awakens. So this is, commentaries say, this interaction has to happen with every Buddha. Once Buddha becomes a Buddha, they pause. There's a hesitation. It's not like they're acting, they're playing a role. No. But it happens. Only a Tathagata knows this. Just like a Tathagata knows the minds and hearts of the previous Tathagatas. We cannot know. Only a Tathagata knows. And he also knew that what he was realizing about the world not being ready and having that leaning away. He didn't say immediately, I'm going to stop. That's it. No. If you recall, Lord Buddha's heart leaned away from the prospect of teaching. So that was an invitation for Brahma Sahampati, for existence itself, to send a representative to the Buddha to beseech him to teach the Dhamma. That was the requirement. And then he would look and he would see and he would say, yes, there are indeed those with little dust in their eyes who are ready. What do you call Venerable Chulapantaka, whom we covered some months ago, who had a dull mind, who was so slow that he couldn't even memorize a single line of a verse? Not a single teaching was able to get in through his head. But Lord Buddha knew that there were many Chulapantakas type of people, us, not just at his time, but those that will come in the future. And our struggles, how we hit against the wall, is like, this is a samadhi, I'm falling out of it, Bhante. How come I can't stick? I can't make it stick. I have a moment of panya here and I have a moment of avidya there. This is unfair. So I must be dumb. And then you recall Chulapantaka. Okay, hold on. I don't think I'm at that level. What happened to Venerable Chulapantaka? He became an arahant. First level, with abilities, psychic abilities that everyone else would rival everyone else with psychic abilities. So there's hope. So I would like you to think about yourselves falling into the first category, those with little dust in their eyes. That's why you're here. That's why you're listening to the Dhamma week after week. But remember, there are many, 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 many others who come to the Dhamma and they say, no, this water in the pool, this pond, this is lovely. In fact, I'm going to stay in the coziness of the water inside. Underneath the surface, it's safer. You know what? No, I think I'm going to I need a pillow. I need to put my head on the cushiony mud and not get up from there, higher from there. All this is a person's choice. So you need to have the initiative, the courage, the gusto, the fortitude to say, no, I might end up being that quadriplegic tomorrow, or lose my mind, or have an accident and die, or not be able to sit again ever in meditation with a straight spine. There goes that. Or not be able to remember anything. Forget the Dhamma, even. Severe case of Alzheimer's. What happens then? Now you know how it feels to be eaten up by a turtle at the bottom of a pool. Then, realizing with utter delight that his request for the Blessed One to go ahead and teach the Dhamma was accepted by the great teacher, Brahma God Sahampati respectfully paid homage again as he bowed and then circumambulated the Tathagata by keeping him to his right. And then, just as he had manifested, he disappeared right then and there. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. This was one of the most beautiful aspects of Buddhist history that I was introduced years ago. It's so lovely. It's so human. It's so full of compassion, kindness. It's the epitome of the Dhamma. It's the epitome of what Lord Buddha did. It takes a lot for a teacher to keep teaching despite the discouraging, disheartening facts that he or she gets to see around them in the course of teaching. Once they've made the decision to teach, it has to be so alive. The fire in your heart has to be so alive, so powerful that no matter what, every person on the planet turns their back, even the devas, and you're alone. All you have is the Dhamma in your heart. Don't give up. Don't give up. You push. You pierce through that water surface. And if you don't understand a certain teaching in the Dhamma, it's okay. Some of those, there's different layers of dust. Even the little can have different categories. Some of Lord Buddha's students were able to understand the teachings in brief, uddesa. It's called in Pali, uddesa, teaching in brief, boom, 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 just like the highlight, or they would read the title of the abstract and all of a sudden they got the message, like the case was with Bahia, like the case was with Venerable Sariputta or Venerable Moggallana. All they heard was one, part of a verse. They got it as Upatissa and Kolita. And then you have the other, with a little bit maybe extra grains of dust in their eyes, who need a little bit more probing, more effort. And that's okay. For them, Lord Buddha taught the Nidesa version of the teachings, which are more detailed. More detailed. To allow them to say, oh, but you have to put the effort. And not be lazy. The effort that comes when you apply your practice, you bring your practice into your life becomes your practice. You don't keep the practice as 1 or 2 hours of sitting every day and then go about your business, have fun, just do this, do that, and basically put it on the shelf. Like you use your car basically during the day if you drive, and once you come back, or your briefcase, your work briefcase, or your laptop for your work, when you come home, what do? I used to have a bowl for my keys. I used to put the keys, or actually I would hang it on the wall, car keys, and that's it. I'm not going to need them while I go to bed, while I'm sleeping. Similarly with the work laptop, I would put that away because I'm not going to use it. Leave me alone until I come back to it tomorrow, or the weekend is off limits too. But that's not how the Dhamma works. That's not how your life in the Dhamma works, ever. You can't put it on the shelf. You can't put it in a key bowl. Your practice, of sati, of sila, of panya, they have to be there with you. So it's not a matter of when it is convenient for you. No, this meeting is important. Dhamma, fine, Bhante, but this meeting is very important with the client. I have to have a meeting. Okay, so let's put the Dhamma over there on the shelf and let's do what I do best. What? That is the moment where you have to practice. That is where it counts. Your practice really matters then. That is you pushing yourself into the field. You're taking what you've understood about the practice intellectually, and you're putting it into the reality of the laboratory, in the field, to test yourself. Let's see how long I can handle, how long I can have sati with this particular individual in the room. Instead of leaving the body, yesterday I did the second of the series on trauma, which apparently is helping a lot of people. One thing that happens is we leave the body. When you're practicing the Dhamma, you learn how to inhabit the body. You're present to the body and everything else that happens, because the body is the body is the conduit with life, not your intellect, not what you think about, what you know about the Dhamma as, yes, your level of understanding of Dhamma. No. Intellect serves a purpose, but you have to be embodying what it is that you're saying that you know about the Dhamma. Otherwise, it's just you're playing a trick on yourself. And that's really sad. That's why a lot of people want to be without teachers these days, because they think we're good. I'm good. Lord Buddha, you just said, Bhante, Lord Buddha didn't have a teacher, so I should be fine. So can you take the Dhamma with you wherever you are, wherever you go? That is key. That is when you're practicing the Satipatthana proper. And remove grain by grain the thin layer of dust. No one will do that for you. No one can do that for you. So I will stop here and see if there are any questions. Comments? I hope you enjoyed it too, this sutta, because it's so beautiful, so lovely. It's very inspiring. And I'm glad. We are eternally glad for Brahma Sahampati to have taken the time, the energy. You see this encounter in different sources, by the way. You see it in the Vinaya, you see it, I think, also in the Udana, if I'm not mistaken, in the Sutta Nipata. So, and there's some expressions where, I think it was in the Sutta Nipata, where Brahma Sahampati goes, it's like, and makes another declaration. And he says, the gates of the deathless have now been opened. He's like as jubilant as a little kid. He's so happy. He was awakened, He didn't technically need the Dhamma. He was doing it out of the compassion in his heart, out of the dana in his heart. He had attained. But he was no Buddha. And he knew what powerful presence the Buddha, Lord Buddha, had, and how he was going to change the whole existence. And he did. He still does. So I will stop here and let us transfer some merits. Akasatha Chabumata Devanagamahitika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Lokasasanam. Akasatha Chabumata Devanagamahitika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Desanam. Akasatha Chabumata Devanagamahitika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Mamparanti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May your practice grow, become stronger with stronger roots and stronger application. And may your life and Dhamma become indistinguishable. That is my wish. May you have the blessings land upon you and your loved ones with health, prosperity, avoidance of sickness, and a constant deepening of the practice by the blessings of the Triple Gem. Sukhi Hotu.